Hey, what's going on, everybody? Do you have wet carpets from water leaking in your Altima or Nissan? Well, you're going to want to stay tuned and watch this entire video because I had 3 separate water leaks that I did 100% resolve, and I'm going to review them in addition to reviewing every other potential leak that I'm aware of in these cars. So let's get into it now. Alright guys, so we're here on the passenger side. As I mentioned, I've already resolved some of these leaks. Now, I had multiple leaks. I'm going to be reviewing all the points that I'm aware of to check, but this passenger side I've already done. I will be doing the driver's side on camera with you. Typically, I like doing step-by-step DIYs and disassembling each part and showing you how to do it, but in my case, because I wasn't quite sure where I'm leaking from and where all my sources were, I didn't go through the disassembly process simply because I might have recorded 30 minutes of me disassembling something and it had been irrelevant. So what I'm going to do is just briefly go over a couple points here. Now, one spot where I was leaking from was the cabin filter itself. So I haven't changed it in a while. There is the cabin filter right there. That little door, that little put an arrow to it right there. I'll insert a clip here I recorded from my phone, but when I pulled out the cabin air filter, it had tons of leaf stuck in it. Was wet, damp, had some water dripping out of it, all of the above. So what I did is shoved the slim profile vacuum in there, sucked it all out, shoved the air gun in there, blew it all out, did it a few times, put a new cabin air filter in there, and it's good. A week later, it's rained, everything. This has been dry. It drove probably 500 miles this weekend. It's perfectly fine, it's dry, good to go. So that did resolve the issue. I just had to blow out the debris, clean it out, put a new filter in there, just make sure it's clean as possible, and you'll resolve that leak. So that is a potential leak point. You can get condensation of water coming from the cabin air filter itself. Definitely check that though, because mine was filthy, clogged up, had to vacuum it and blow it out. That is a potential spot. So that is the first spot. Second spot here, as you can see, I have the carpet peeled back here. This drain hose, this is where the condensation drains. There's a light on it. So this is where the condensation drains from the air conditioning and heating system, okay? So you want to make sure that there's no leaking coming from right here. That is a potential spot if it's clogged up. You can take this off. You can see in there, obviously the light's going to have to be in there, but you can see in there if it's clogged up, and you can also see if you have any clogging here. I put a pipe cleaner in this just to ensure that was good. It's blowing out dry right now, but you can put a pipe cleaner in there, also blow it out with air, also put a vacuum on it, and I also put a hose in here, like a garden hose stuck in there, and I basically flushed it out. So I'll grab the garden hose to show you just an example of what I mean, but you can 100% put a garden hose in this and flush it out from this side. So you can flush it this way and vacuum and clean it out from the port right here. So let me show you what I mean by the garden hose flush. All right, so I have the garden hose here. I had it on a jet setting. Literally all I did was put it over the hose and lightly turn it on. You can even hear it. I'm doing it right now. I'm letting it flow. All right, it's flowing. So you can probably even come underneath the car. Let me get underneath of it real quick. You might be able to see where it was coming out. Definitely a method that you can use if this is clogged up is flush out this hose, okay? So that is definitely another point. You can flush this out with a garden hose if need be, okay? So just make sure you're not leaking from down here. It's dry, good to go. You can flush it how I just did. Make sure it's good here. If all looks well, put it back on. You don't have a leak there, but couldn't hurt to flush it just to be on the safe side. So make sure your heating and air conditioning system is on point. From the cabin air filter to our drain right there, all this needs to be double checked for leaks and clogging. Make sure there's no debris, anything of that nature, and you can resolve that. So that is a leak point I had. I had no problem with the hose here. Like I mentioned, there was a problem with the cabin air filter, but this could be a potential leaking point as well if it's overflowing from clogs, okay? So make sure you check those. They are definitely leak points. So from there, we'll get on to our next leak point, which is the sunroof drains. All right, guys, so the next thing we're gonna review is the sunroof, moonroof, drain ports and tubes, okay? So they are not in the best spot, all right? I'm not gonna go through each step, but I'm gonna review what I did on the passenger side. So I'm just gonna show you what it looks like. It's almost virtually impossible to see with the glove box and everything here on the passenger side, but that right there, that is the tube. So that is the moonroof drain tube that comes right from the A-pillar, goes all the way up to the moonroof, and then goes right to the firewall. It's about a 3/8 hose, goes right outside, runs down all the way out to the firewall, okay? So there you can see it's pretty high up. That's it. And I'm going to go through some motions of what I did to resolve this side, and then we're going to go step by step on the driver's side, and then I'll rectify that side on camera with you guys. But just a brief overview here of the passenger side, and just wanted you guys to see what it looks like if you just popped your head up under here and just laid on the floor. This is what you would see, and that is the tube, and that's where you're going to find it. All right, guys, so obviously the passenger side here is disassembled. Now, I took this apart without going through the steps, simply because I didn't know if I was going to find it or be able to source it from what I was doing. So I might have recorded the process of taking all this apart, and then it had been irrelevant because it wasn't where I needed to be at to source the leak. Thankfully it was, but getting all this apart is not hard. This panel pops out, this panel pops up, this kick panel pops off. The glove box is held in with 8 screws, okay? You got 3 Phillips on the bottom. There is 3 Phillips here on the top, and then you got 2 in the inside of the glove box, okay? So that is the 8 screws that hold in the glove box. You can also easily pop off the side panel, and you'll see where the glove box is connected into these slots, and it'll literally just pop off, guys. So once you do that, you can pop that off. This harness block right here, this was held in with 1 Phillips or 10 mil. You can use either or. That is the screw. It was held in right here on the side, and you're going to have to manipulate and pull around on the carpet, of course, but that is how I gained access to it. Is simply taking the glove box out, kick panel, side sill, and you know, the side plate here. So nothing crazy here on the passenger side. Typically I do step-by-step DIYs, and that's how I like to do my DIYs, just to show every step. But this is not very hard to get the glove box out, especially if you've wrenched before, taken interior components before apart. That should be kind of straightforward, guys. Your goal is to get up here to the firewall, to that port, and that's really your goal. From there, you can go about repairing it. All right, guys, once you have gained access to the sunroof drain port and you can visibly see it and everything around it, you can then determine if it's actually leaking or not. You can probably see it leaking if it's, you know, been raining and it's wet. You might see, you know, condensation and water around it once you access it. If not, you can wet the car down with the hose, or you can flush it and it would make it very obvious. And that's what I would suggest doing regardless, to not only help you identify a leak in the drain port, but also flushing it to ensure there's no contaminants in the port itself or behind it or anything of that nature. So I'm going to review the flusher that I made personally for this, and you can utilize it. I'll give you the part numbers and everything you'll need to do it, but I would highly suggest flushing it once you've gained access. It can help you identify if it's indeed leaking, and then not only that, but it can also clear any debris or anything that's in the port or behind it. So I would definitely recommend the flusher, and I'm going to get into flushing it right now. All right, guys, so here is our flushing setup. Now, what I basically have here is a heater core flusher that I've made for jobs in the past, and I've just adapted it to work with flushing the moonroof drain. So basically all I have here is a shutoff valve on the garden hose, okay? So it's just this piece with the shutoff valve, okay? Then we have this 3/4 garden hose adapter, okay? And then that's going to screw on to the valve and also allow the nipple to screw on, which is an adapter, a hose bar basically is what it is, and it's a 5/8 inner diameter and 3/4 thread, okay? So that is the setup. I'll include some pictures and part numbers of what this is. You know, the 5/8 hose is from Home Depot. This shutoff valve is from Home Depot. This adapter is from Home Depot, as well as the nipple is from Home Depot. Now, you probably can do this in the size that the hose is in, but I've already built this, so it is what it is. Now, the hose, I believe, our drain hose, From the car itself, the moonroof drain hose is a 3/8, so I've replicated it with a 3/8 drain hose. I got this from Tractor Supply. This is fertilizer tube, basically is what it is. It was pretty pricey. It was about 30 bucks for 25 feet of it. I'll include that right here as well as to what this is, and I just cut a small portion, and as you can see, I put it inside of the 5/8 tube and hose clamped it. So basically this is replicating the drain hose from the moonroof. This is identical to basically what the drain hose is, and I just hose clamped it into our 5/8 setup, and that gives us a shutoff valve that we can control the flow, and we can, you know, flush this out at our own pace and give it as much bump and pressure as we want. So there's the setup, guys. A little bit wild looking here, but it definitely works. So that's all that matters, and let's go ahead and get into it, and I'll show you how it works. All right, guys, you can see our tube hooked up. I didn't even push it all the way on. I didn't even need to, and it was just fine. But there is the hose right next to it, so you can see the OE drain hose right next to our 3/8 hose that we got, virtually the same size. It fits right over the nipple perfect. We can follow this right down here, and then I can just control water flow and let it go right through. All right, and that's all we need to do. You can, if it's not, you know, coming out, then you might need to bump it pretty hard. Like, you know, I got it full flow with a very small shutoff valve on the other side, and you'll see it coming out right here under the cowl. So I have the cowl removed, but we can see exactly where it's draining out. So underneath the hood, this is where that fitting, the plastic fitting, leads to, right there. All right, guys, so I just turned that off, that light flow I had. But just to review with you guys, I did take the cowl off, okay? So basically what you're doing is removing the 2 push clips on this side here, the 2 push clips on the opposite side, the 3 in the middle, and you're removing the 14 millimeters to pop the wipers out, and the cowl will slide back and off, in addition to removing the 2 little rubber pieces here on each side. The cowl is off. You'll notice when it's flowing that this is where the water comes out right here. So make sure this is clear. If you can't really see behind here, but you can try to get your finger back there and make sure that there's nothing obstructing the flow and the path of where the water is coming from. Okay, so that needs to be clean and clear. That is where the water's flowing out as well, so as you just saw in the video. So anytime it's draining, it's coming out here, and it's dripping right behind the fender well, and it's coming, basically you can see that little water path is just dripping right down to the bottom. Okay, that is the water path. So make sure you know, if you have to, you might have to take the cowl off, make sure it's clean. But if you're concerned and you're thinking that there's a block on the other side, you know, this is where you're looking. There's no other place you can get behind there. You can't see it directly on it unless you're deciding to drill out spot welds and things of that nature. But I'm pretty sure you're not going to disassemble the frame of the car. So just make sure this is clean. Make sure there's nothing behind there. You can even take some air in there, shoot it out, clean it, whatever. But that is our drain point. That is the closest spot you can see from the drain point of the firewall. So we saw it inside the plastic yellow piece. This is where we can see it on the outside. That is the closest point of drainage we can visibly see. So there we go, guys. That is the visible drain port on the exterior of the vehicle. And it's probably going to be hard to see it over here on the driver, but there is one in there as well. It's just kind of hidden from the wiper motor assembly and all that, but it's there. So using the passengers as an example is much easier, but that is the point where you'll see the water flow out. Okay, all right, so once you have it flushed out, you can then proceed to the next step, which is removing the drain port itself and servicing it in the way I'm going to outline in the next steps. So I'm not only going to replace and fix the seal and the gasket, but I'm also going to review some other options to really ensure that this doesn't happen again. So I didn't get removing the passenger side on camera here, but I did just pop it out with a regular panel tool. Just was careful, gently popped it out. You can get these as well as replacements. So if you do happen to break it when trying to get it out, it's not the end of the world. Although if you're careful enough, it's really not that hard, and mine came out pretty easily on both sides. So let's get into it. All right, guys, I believe I have the issue figured out. So here is the drain port that goes to the firewall. This is the end where the drain tube goes in, and this is what's shooting out in the firewall. Literally all that's draining out on the other side is this little piece right there. You can see it's pretty open and pretty close to where it seals on the firewall, which could potentially allow it to drain back in. All they did is put this small seal around it, this like foamy crappy rubber seal, and mine is broken. In my opinion, it could be a few things wrong with this piece. It could be clogged, so it can be clogged from in there. You can see ours is clear. You could have debris in there, so it could be clogged up, which you should be able to get out with air or flushing it with a hose. But if it isn't clogged, your seal might be bad, which is definitely the case in with ours. The seal was broken, so I put this new foam seal from a Harbor Freight seal kit that's very similar to the material from the OE one. It's just a little thicker, which in this case might be a good thing. So as you can see, I do have it resealed. And I also saw somebody mention online that the fix is similar to what I just kind of outlined, is that this is just so close here that it can drain right back in. If it's just sitting here draining from this, it can easily just drip right through the clips and just come right back in. Yes, the seal is here, but still, I think there's something else we can do here to make this a little better. So what I have here is a piece of hose. I cannot tell you what the size is. I just randomly had this in my toolbox. I truly wish I knew what it was. I don't even know what it's from, but you just need a tight hose that will fit around it. So I'm just pressing this around, and I had it pretty much perfect before. I need both hands. Obviously I can't do it while recording here, but this is essentially what it's going to look like. It's just going to have a piece of hose shooting out, so that way it helps direct the water to go straight out further into the, past the firewall, instead of just draining right at the firewall. So let me go ahead and get this thing on here, and I'm hoping between the new seal and our new little drain tube that we're going to add here, it should extend the drainage from that, and we should have no more problems of it leaking into the car. So let me get this attached and we'll pop this back in, and then we'll see if it fixed our problem. All right guys, drain tube is fully installed. You can see it's nice and tight, fully around that port on the inner side, on the firewall side. So I am honestly not sure which direction this arrow should be going in. You see there is an arrow. I didn't see when I got it out because I didn't notice there was an arrow, and this was spinning in there when I was messing with it. So it's either going to go up or down. Probably the arrow is going to be going up, because that's the, see how it's slanted? That's the orientation that the hose is coming. It's coming down the A-pillar like this. So I'm assuming that that arrow is indicating up. So that's what I'm going for. We're just going to put it in with the arrow facing up. And, that's, like I said, the same angle that the hose is coming would make the most sense. So we're going to pop it in just like this, hope for the best, and we're going to give her a test shot. All right, guys, and just for reference, there is the hole that the drain, the plastic, yellowy white drain goes into, with that hole right there. And you can see our tube right there. There is the hole. All right, so just want to note that. That's what it looks like with the drain out. All right, guys, probably not going to be able to see too well, but I'm going to go ahead and try and get this in here on camera. So there is our new little drain tube I put on the back. I just cut that little piece of hose that I had. Let's go ahead and get this thing popped in, arrow up. One thing too, before you pop this back in, make sure you dry that area good, so that way when you go to leak test and put water on the car again, you know that it's dry, and if you see water, that it's actually from what you're doing at that current time, not water from previous leaking. Okay, sorry the camera fell there, guys, but got it back in. Okay, and it's actually really tight with that new seal. It feels way tighter and better than it did with that OE seal. I think it's pretty good and in a good orientation. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can put the camera down here again, if I can operate it without knocking it over here. Hopefully you guys can see at all. Yeah, that thing's fully pushed in. I'm gonna go ahead and put our original OEM hose back on, and I'm gonna go ahead and leak test this bad boy. Okay, it's on, good to go. I'm gonna close the door, and I'm gonna leave the camera running so maybe you guys can see if it's leaking or not, but we're gonna go ahead and start the hose up and see if we get any water in that thing. All right, guys, it's gonna be hard to tell, but you can see the water going through the tube and it's not dripping in. So something I did, I've done this 3 times just now. I did 3 tests. There's no water dripping underneath of it, as you can see. And I also put a piece of receipt paper there. So, you know, obviously receipt paper is very easily noticeable when wet. So I put it there just as a, you know, leak tester almost. So if it did drip even the slightest drop, I could see it. So let me grab the receipt here. And it's bone dry, guys. Oh my God. We are good. I got a drop of it on there from my hand, but it's not dripping from that port, from the hose, from anything. So our seal and our tube method, I believe, the combination of the two, it resolved it, guys. It is good to go. We are no longer leaking. That is fixed. So now I got to do the other side. The other side is leaking as well on the driver. This is obviously the passenger. So there we go, guys. This one is good to go. A little bit of tube, new seal, fixed. All right, guys, it is a week later. So as I mentioned and reviewed, I did do the passenger side first. I didn't do it all on camera, just briefly reviewed what needs to be done and some of the things that, you know, I went over and found. It has rained a few times this week and bone dry, guys. So that did resolve our issue. We have no wetness, no leaking. Proof over a week's time with, you know, me not only testing it prior, but also with some heavy rains a few times this week. We are good. So the passenger side has been resolved. No more leaking. So what I'm going to do is go through everything on the driver's side. I did a brief overview and reviewed really everything that needs to be done on the passenger side. It's going to be essentially the same thing on the driver. As I reviewed, I did mention the cabin air filter was an issue for me. You definitely want to check your drain port hose right here for the HVAC system. Obviously, we resolved the sunroof drain, which was an issue. So on the other side, we're just going to be doing the sunroof drain on that side, and that's essentially it, guys. So good here on the passenger. Let's get that driver resolved. All right, guys, here on the driver, and this is how you'll know that you got wetness going on here. So look, underneath the mats, this is what they all would have. They have condensation on them. See, it's wet. That is wetness right there. Pure indication water's getting in. I just touched it. It doesn't feel too wet here now, but it is trapping. It is a little damp. It's kind of hard to see here, but it is trapping condensation. So that's what you'll see. I had it in every corner. Okay, so what we're going to do is get into resolving this driver's side. I'm going to go through the steps of how I would approach it, how I did approach it, and you know, you can do this yourself and, you know, kind of go through the motions to get yours resolved and figure out what you need as well. So let's get into it. All right, so driver's side here, definitely not in the best spot as we already reviewed. It's going to be kind of hard to see here on this driver, but if you look right past that white box right there, man, it's really tough. You can see it, but it's right there, guys. There it is. We can see the tube. So there it is, guys. Let's go ahead and start getting this apart, and we'll see if we can get to that thing and get it resolved. All right, guys, first thing here, we're going to pop up this sill running the frame here on the rocker. So literally just pulling on it. It's got to be gentle with it. It's just got plastic clips holding it in. It is plastic. If it's cold and brittle and you're fighting it hard, it could potentially break. So, you know, don't fight it too hard. It'll pop out. You just gotta, you know, be gentle with it. It's like they like to get hung up on these corners here. This is like the 5th time I've taken this thing out. There we go. Got it popped out. So just so you can get an idea of what she looks like. But yeah, just be careful with it because it will definitely break. All right, so now that we got that off, we're gonna go ahead and get this corner here of the kick panel. So this thing's nothing fancy. You just grab it right down here, pull it out to the side, work your hand up into here, and then push it out. It's got a couple clips holding it in. This can be very tight as well. Just give it steady, firm pressure, okay? Because we're held in with these 2 clips. And if it's cold, brittle, old, they will break, okay? So just be careful with them, guys. All right, now we're getting to the area here I'm gonna pull the carpet back a hair here. All right, guys, next thing here, which I pretty much think is a must in order to get up in here easily without having to fight it, which is the last thing we want to be doing when we're dealing with delicate parts like that, is removing this lower panel here. So this cover panel here underneath of the steering wheel here, we're going to get this thing out here, and I think it's going to give us the access we need to really get this done a lot easier than fighting tight small spaces. All right, so first thing I want to do, sorry about the sun glare, it's not in the best spot right now, but I'm going to pop this panel out here. You just take a pry, it's just held in with some clips. I usually just put one in there like that. You can take another one and it'll start popping and separating, and then there we go, guys, right off. All right, so I'm curious if maybe we can see it from right here. Not really, but it doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead and get this thing off, and then we'll get into getting this thing resolved, guys. All right, guys, sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself. I didn't expect it to go this smoothly, I guess I can say. I just pulled this, you know, all this panel here is, it just pops and pulls right out. I just lightly grabbed on this here. I just wanted to tug it and see how it felt, just trying to get a gauge before I, you know, brought it in on camera to accurately show you guys, and it popped right out. So I'm not going to pop it back in to pop it out on camera with you guys, sorry. But literally all I did is grab it right here, popped right out, starting to pull it right here. As you can see, it's got free play. If we come look on the side of the dash where we pop that off, you can see where it's held in. So it's not anything fancy, it's just held in with clips. It looks like it's going to be held in right here. That's what's holding me back with these two screws. It looked like I didn't need to remove them, but definitely got to remove them. So you can remove those two 10 mils with a 10, or remove them with a Phillips, and this should drop right down. So let me grab a tool and we'll get those off. All right, guys, so two 10 mils. I just got a 10 mil on an impact. This should free us up. I dropped it down here like an idiot, but it doesn't matter, I got it. That's all it was, guys. That'll give you the free play you need here for this to drop down. And really all we need to do here at this point to get this up out of our way is just disconnect the harnesses, guys. So quite a few harnesses here. I mean, they're just harnesses. You're just going to be, you know, you can see they all got tabs at the bottom. So you should be able to just sneak your finger here in on the tab, pop them right out. The second one's a hair different than the first one. It's kind of freezing out here, so my fingers aren't working the best, so I'll use that tool to get that one out. Same design on this blue one here, so that's good. And we got this white one up here at the top. There we go. All right, guys, so all these are free. Got these here to just pull on them. That one actually pulled out. This one might need a little persuasion with a tool. All right, guys, of course this one's gonna fight me here, so let me see if I can get under it with this little pry tool I have. Just a, you know, panel popper pry tool, nothing special. These little flimsy plastic pieces don't really cooperate with tools, but there we go. It's coming out. It doesn't want to, but geez, so that thing was in there, guys. My God. Got the OBD2 harness here. Thing's locked in a few different ways. I think what I can do is honestly just pull this down right here instead of keep disassembling this whole harness. We just needed some of it out of our way to access in here. So let's see if we can get a better look-see in here now. Get the flashlight here. Can't really see it from here. We're gonna have to drop this fuse box, I believe, too. So I guess that's gonna be our next thing, guys. Fuse box has got to come down. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and see if we can get this fuse box out. I do have the negative battery terminal disconnected just in case, you never know. You just want to be on the safe side. So 10 mil on this, another 10 mil up top here. Should be able to drop this down some. And that 10 mil just went flying, but we'll get it. Not the end of the world. All right, so to really get at it, this needs to get out of our way. And we got to move that box behind it too. So I think what I'm going to try to do is unplug this from the back. So all the harnesses going to the back, I'm going to unplug. Try to flip this up out of our way. Keep the front harnesses installed. and we'll see if we can get at it and get this thing out of our way to get behind it. So let's go ahead and try that. All right, guys, I'm gonna bring you back in here. Got a little carried away. I know I said I was gonna go step by step on this one. I'm figuring it out as I go too. I mean, I've never dug this deep into this car. I've never had to, so it's kind of hard to see what needs to be done and what can be skipped by. Now, I wanted initially said I was gonna take the harnesses out of this. I haven't taken any of the harnesses out. I kind of really don't want to. So I just pushed it to the side. That white box behind us held in with 10 mil. So took the 10 mil out, pushed that to the side, disconnected the harnesses on it. We got these two big harnesses. There's a gray one and a white one. They just have like a hinge on it. You pull down and they pop out. And I got this out of the way. Everything's connected for the most part, aside for those harnesses. But now I can pull this carpeting down, which is what I need to do to approach this how I did the other side. And now, with that carpet pulled down and looking back up in here with that thing out of the way, I mean, I don't even know if I could still get it on camera. This is crazy. The worst spot, guys. This is the worst spot, but there it is. You can see the tube going in. So I think I'm gonna have to pop off that black thing right next to it, that black retainer with that wiring. And then we should be able to peel that carpeting back, and then we should have access to that drain and hopefully finally get this thing resolved. So let's go ahead and see if we can get at it directly. So I'm just going to pop that off and I'll bring you back in here in a second. All right, guys, so I hope I didn't lose you here. I mean, this is, you know, I kind of wish I would have did this side and then recorded it on, you know, step by step on the passenger, because it's a lot easier on the passenger. But, you know, mistakes were made. I started on that side. Well, actually, technically I started on this side, didn't figure it out. Then I went to the passenger, figured it out, and now we're back at the driver. So, but I mean, this is pretty straightforward. I mean, all this stuff is, you know, similar to kind of stuff I reviewed on the passenger. These type of clips are just going around the bolts. You're just pushing it out. They're just all clips, harnesses, and we're just trying to move them out of our way with the least amount of disassembly possible. That is my goal here. I'm just trying to disassemble this enough to get to where I needed to get to without completely going crazy. Okay, so yes, this is a little messy right now. It doesn't look great, but I mean, it's really just pushed out of the way with a few harnesses and clips disconnected. That's really all this is. It just doesn't look amazing. That's all. So after much fighting and some cussing here, I think I'm good. Think I got at it, and I think I could pull this carpet back, because that is our goal, to get at this, is to get the carpet to come back. Now, trying to get light in here and record and get my hand in here at the same time, not easy. Gonna do my best though. So as you can see right here, carpet is free. Should be able to, I got the tube pulled back. You just pull it off. So literally you're just pulling the tube off of it. And let me move the carpet out of the way here. I hope you can see that, guys. I'm really sorry. I mean, I'm trying my best here. This is not record friendly. Hold on. There we go. You can kind of see it right up in there. All right. Hopefully you can see that. If you can't, I mean, this is where we're at, guys. You're basically looking straight underneath this bar, straight ahead. It's right there. I want to try to peel this carpet back some. I was going to try to do it one-handed with you guys on camera, but I'm telling you what needs to be done. I'm giving you the resolution. Going step by step is what I like to do. Just kind of impossible on this job here. Well, at least from how I approached it. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it back, guys, and I'm gonna go through the motions on what needs to be done once you have access to the actual drain. Okay, so let's get to it. All right, guys, so after fighting the carpet here, see if I can get you in there. There it is. The arrow is in a very weird spot if you can see it, but I'm pretty sure that one was supposed to be pointing up as well, and it is freely moving in there. So right where my finger's at, if you can see, there it is, guys. It's right there. So what I'm going to do is review how I approach this on the other side, and we're going to get into doing the same thing on this side. All right, so now that we have it exposed, let's get this thing figured out. All right, guys, so first thing we're going to do is review flushing this. Now, this drain can have debris stuck in it, could be stuck behind it. So if it's clogged, flushing it will definitely bump it and get it out, and then, you know, you'll have a fresh start. Now, this could resolve the issue. I would still suggest doing what I'm going to do after regardless. Even if you're planning on going the extra steps to get this resolved, I would still flush this just to ensure it's good behind there and that you got a fresh start once you clean everything up, okay? So here is the setup. She's leaking a bit from the hose gasket. Don't really care. It's not going to affect anything we're doing here. So there she is. Now you don't have to go crazy. You don't need to go full flow. I would suggest doing the flush before you go, you know, taking it out and resolving it or anything like that. Just do this first before you tamper with the actual drain. Okay, so there it is, guys. We don't need full power. I'm just going to lightly turn the valve open a hair so you can see it's going in. You can hear it coming out. And there it's draining right there, guys. So ours looks to be functioning as it should. Looks pretty good. And if it's clogged and not coming out, you can give it a hair more power, like, you know, give it a quick bump. And that should solve it. Get anything that's clogged up back there out. But yeah, guys, this will also help detect the leak, because now that I'm replicating water going into it, especially at a much higher flow than it typically would, we can look at it and see if we're getting water back there. And actually, you know what? It doesn't look like it's leaking at the moment. Oh, there it is. We got some coming down. I was gonna say, man, it's gotta be leaking. It's really hard to see. But yes, I just saw a drop. So yes, this is doing the same thing as the other side was, as I suspected. For a second there, I was like, man, this thing ain't even leaking. Oh, she's leaking. Really hard to get on camera. This is just the worst spot here on this driver's side. But yeah, guys, you can let this flow for about 1 minute. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to let it flush. So about 1 minute, guys, that's all this really needs. It should solve the issue of any debris that was in there or behind it in the cowl. And all that should be bumped out and good to go. Clean start. And then we can get into resolving the issue of the actual drain leaking. And, you know, that's probably more than likely your issue if you have water coming in. So, yes, blockage is a potential problem. You definitely want to flush it and ensure that it's clean, especially if you got a ton of debris when you pop your hood, a whole bunch of leaves and acorns and grime where the cowl is, where the wipers are. It's a good chance you got debris back there. This car is pretty clean for the most part. So mine weren't clogged on either side. They were just leaking from the gasket, but it doesn't hurt to flush it, and I'm glad that I did, and I can show you guys how to do it just to ensure that it's resolved, no matter what your issue is. So, turn that off there. Okay, that is good to go. So we're going to get into now is removing the drain port and getting it fixed and resolved so we don't ever have to deal with this issue again. All right, guys, so this wire here is really in the way with trying to record anything clearly, but still going to try to do my best here to get this on camera for you guys, so at least we can see something as I'm doing it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the same thing I did on the passenger side. We are going to remove this drain. So I just have a panel popper. Just want to get behind it, and you got to be very gentle. I mean very gentle with this thing. It is not the most cooperative thing to be pulled out. All right, so I got the other side out really good, no issues at all. Praying I can get the same result on this side. They're not the hardest thing to get out, but they do need a little bit of persuasion and a little bit of carefulness. All right, guys, this job was not meant to be recorded. It was not, but we got it out, and the gasket is compromised. I did compromise it a hair more, shoving a pry bar underneath of it, but got it out in one piece, guys. No damage. So let's see if we can look up here a little better now. There it is. I don't see or feel anything behind there. You can get your finger in there, check for debris. Everything's good. I got a little bit here, as you can see on my finger, but nothing crazy, guys. So that is clean behind there. Now let's get into resolving this. All right, so here we are with what we need to resolve this issue. Now, here's the one I just popped out. You can see how bad that gasket was on it. Just like the other side, which I have right next to it. Just flimsy crap, guys. Same thing as this one. I mean, they were both compromised before I even took them out. But yeah, I mean, they're really thin, just junk. Now, I did a thing. I actually found this on Amazon, guys. So here is the listing. You can buy these on Amazon, as many Nissans utilize the same setup. Okay, so here it is. Virtually looks identical. And what they did is they actually put a nice thick gasket on it, which almost replicates what I did on the passenger side, because what I have here is this seal and assortment from Harbor Freight, and that's what I used on the passenger. So I took one of these gaskets and I essentially just put it on the back of this, and that's how I resolved the seal and put a new seal on it. Okay, so on the opposite side, I think I'm going to go ahead and use this, since I do like that gasket, how thick and nice it is, and I would like to give this a shot and see how it works. So we're going to use a new one. You don't need to get a new one, as these come out relatively easy without breaking them, and you could do something like I did and reseal it with something a little thicker. And that's also the same thing that these guys did whenever they designed this aftermarket one. But we're going to give it a shot and put it to the test. So what I'm going to be doing is using this one. However, I am going to still do the fix that I did on the passenger side, which should help eliminate any leaking or any potential leaking whatsoever. So as I mentioned on that side, if we're looking at the back of these, okay, the drain is just coming right out flush with where it goes into the firewall. The opening is flush with the, you know, firewall mount right here, and it can easily creep back in because, well, it's flush with the firewall. If there's any type of clogging or anything, it's going to easily creep back into the car because it's right there. What they should have did is made a plastic tube or extended this out, or made it come out how I did and showed on the other side. So what I'm going to do is cut about 1 inch of this hose off. As I mentioned, I don't know what size this is. I just randomly had this laying around and it happened to work perfect. I have some airline hose cutters. It's just really sharp razor blades that cut hose evenly and flush. So I'm going to cut 1 inch off. We're going to push this into our new drain here, and then we're going to extend it out with the hose so then it can drain accurately, and that way we'll resolve it with not only a new seal but also sending that water further into the firewall so it doesn't have the opportunity to even leak back in the first place, guys. So I'm going to cut this hose, and then we're going to go ahead and push it on to our new drain. And there it is, guys, pressed on tight, good to go. It's sturdy. Once you get the rubber pressed over it, it should hold pretty tightly. All right, just make sure it's nice and firm and even over it. And there we go. We have a fully resolved leak right here. New gasket, nice and thick, should seal it very nicely. We have this extension to send the water further into the drain so we don't have to worry about it coming back in a car. And hopefully, fingers crossed, just as the passenger side was solved, this should resolve our driver's side and we should have no more leaks, guys. So here is our fix. Extension from the drain port, new seal. Let's get it installed. All right, guys, so there is our hole right there. I just briefly wiped it off just to, you know, get all the water out of that area, so when we leak test it, we can have an accurate, dry, fresh start to gauge from. Okay, so as I said, this wire is, does not want anything recorded here, guys. It is just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting more. But there we go, guys. That is all cleaned up. We have our resolved mounted hose and fresh drain port here. I want to do arrow up again, so let's get this thing installed. I'm just going to pop it right back into our hole there, and from there we'll put the OEM drain tube back on and leak test it, and we'll see where we're at, guys. All right, guys, so it's popped in. It's going to be impossible to see, but it's in. See if I can show you guys. There we go, guys. It's right there. It's in. Arrow pointing up. Feels tight. Feels like it would seal pretty well. So what I want to do is grab our tube here, put it back on. Should fit over this just as it did the OEM one. They look pretty good. Yep, got it nice and tight. So there it is. Drain tube on, everything good. So now our goal is to see if it leaks. So what I'm going to do, close the car up. We're going to run some water on it with a garden hose, and after some heavy water on it, we'll see if it's leaking. So let's give it a shot. All right guys, so we're outside of the car here, have a garden hose here, nothing fancy, just a regular nozzle. We're gonna go on a heavy shower setting. And I'm just gonna do this for about 1 to 2 minutes. So sit here and go back and forth on the moonroof. I'll even double check the passenger, which I'm pretty confident about because I did this 3 separate times for the passenger. It didn't leak. And then over the course of a week, it rained a few times and it's no leaking, guys. The passenger's dry, so we're just gonna do this for a little bit here. Then we'll go back in the car and check this driver's side and see what it's looking like. All right, guys. Wire in the way again from vision, but it's looking dry. I don't see anything. And I did my receipt paper method. See, there's a piece of receipt paper right there underneath of it. I'm not seeing anything, guys. I don't see any leaking at all. Oh man, she might just be resolved, guys. Move the light a little bit here. You can see there's no water coming down here. Usually it would be, you know, obviously you see the wetness around it. I'm not seeing it, guys. It's looking good. I'm gonna do that a couple more times just to be sure, but so far so good, guys. And I drenched it pretty good, so I'm gonna do it one more time and we'll see where it's at, but so far so good. All right, guys, I just drenched it for like 2 minutes. I mean, went nuts on it. And dry, guys. Nothing, not a drip around that seal, and that's the new one. So that confirms this one from Amazon works with that seal. So it's a tight enough fit with a good enough seal. That thick seal, I think, plays a huge role in addition to our extended drain tube. I'm gonna grab the receipt paper here. Dry as a bone, guys. Completely dry. That's it, guys. It's fixed. So you could really use whatever one you want. You could use this new Amazon one and add the tube, or you can just reuse the original one like I did on the passenger side with a Harbor Freight seal or a seal that's a little thicker that would go around it cleanly. In my opinion, instead of going to Harbor Freight and getting a seal kit that has a seal that isn't 100% circular and perfect for it, I would just say get this Amazon one, man. If it ever happens to me again on the passenger side, I'm just gonna get the Amazon one. So I would say go with the Amazon one, buy 2 of them, one for each side. You're gonna put an extended tube on it like we outlined and showed, and problem solved, guys. So now it is just a matter of putting this back together. Not really gonna do it on camera, guys. Not a lot to do here. It's just gonna be pulling the carpet back, pushing these boxes back, getting the harnesses that were detached back. I mean, it's the reverse of removal. I know nobody wants to hear that, but it's the truth. Nothing crazy. It was just a tight fit in here. Not the best place to do it. The passenger, in my opinion, is a lot easier. You know, this stuff just all is in the way, blocking you, blocking the vision, blocking me from recording, all of the above. So definitely a really tight fit, but just take note of what you did when you took it apart, and it should go back together relatively simple as long as you take your time and you're not forcing it, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this back together and let's see where we're at. All right, so reassembling here. I wanted to bring you guys back in here for a second because I really, although it was a pain maneuvering all this stuff, I really didn't do too much. Okay, if we look under here, all I did was remove these 2 harnesses. Okay, so I pulled it down. This right here that's connected to the bottom with a, you know, wire tie clip, pop that off. That's how I was able to push that out of the way. This was pushed out of the way. And of course, you know, the block itself was held in with a 10 mil, like I mentioned. You will have to remove the harness to get to that 10 mil. So basically, the harness is in this, push it out of the way, and then this will be pushed out of the way. I didn't disconnect anything in the fuse box harness-wise. All we did simply was remove the 2 10 mils. So now that I got all that behind there put back together, got some of those wires clipped back in, you know, on their wire tie clips as well. I'm gonna go ahead and get our 10 mils in, the fuse box, get this back in, and then essentially this is all about back together, and it would just be a matter of putting the beauty panel cover here underneath the steering wheel back, hooking our harnesses back up, plugging the wire tie clips back in, and this is it, man. It's really not too bad. Fighting this stuff is the hardest. I just really didn't want to disconnect all these harnesses and mess with it. If you know, the least amount possible was what I was going for. So you'll have to fight this stuff a little bit, but you can push it out of the way and definitely access it as I just did. All right, so just wanted to note that. Really not a ton to disassemble. It's just a tight spot to work in, and maneuvering around it, especially if you're recording like I was, not fun. But that's about it, guys. We're gonna get these 10 mils in, 1 and 2, get the fuse box attached, and then we'll get all this back together. All right, guys, we are all but back together here. Have this back in. Just make sure this slides into the cover here, and it has the two 10 mils holding it in. This slides in and pops back in. I mean, it's all very simple stuff, guys. Not, you know, if you're planning on doing this and you've wrenched before and worked on your car, it's pretty straightforward, okay? So really all we have left is just the kick panel here. So guide this guy back in, get it installed here. Gotta find the clamps and push it back in. There we go. Then we'll just get the rocker guard here back on, press it in, get it nice and tight, and this is done, guys. Really just minor disassembling to do a whole lot of fighting in a tight space is really what it comes down to. All right, guys, all back together here. So there we go, everything is good to go. Nothing too crazy, just a pain to try and figure out. So if your floors are still wet, mine are pretty dry. I didn't get a lot of water spilled all over from flushing and testing, so I'm pretty good here. I'm gonna test the passenger one again, make sure it's not wet from all that water testing I just did too, because hey, just because we were looking at the driver's side, it also would have got wet on the passenger if it was wet. And good to go, guys. Dry, nothing. So our floors are dry. If they aren't, I would suggest shop vacuuming and wiping up as much as you can before putting the carpet back down. You might have to peel it back some and really get under there to get this dry. Have the mats out. What we're going to do is run the car for a little bit with the heat on. I mean, everything is dry. I really don't even need to, but I'm just going to do it to make sure everything is good. But that's what I would do. I would just leave the heat running on, you know, the floor only, have it max on 90, hot as hell, and just let it sit and help dry this out. And then you can, you know, really evaluate on the next few rains if it's leaking or not. All right, so there we go, guys. Dry, got that resolved. All right, guys, bringing you back in here. Another week has passed. More rain during the week, and dry as a bone, guys. Super dry. Just did some more leak testing. Okay, so just honestly, it was about 3 to 5 minutes. I just ran the hose on it. And I'm going to touch base on one more thing. There are rear drain hoses and drain ports as well. So not only are there ones in the front, but there's also ones in the rear here. Now, I have the trunk disassembled here. Very easy. Just push clips literally on everything. This pops up. I mean, it's all very similar, self-explanatory stuff, guys. So here is one rear drain. So I would suggest peeling these carpets back and checking them out. These look like they aren't really getting much water flow or use at all. They're not as dirty with as much debris in the hose as the ones in the front. They look really clean. I don't see any evidence of leaking around it. And like I mentioned, I just did 3 to 5 minutes of leak testing, and it's bone dry around it, guys. So these rear ones are good, but couldn't hurt to check them out. Now, if they are leaking, I don't believe it's going to get into the actual cabin, so it's not going to get into your interior, but definitely worth looking at. This looks like it might have had something coming from it at some point, but everything down here is dry. There's no debris. And I just did a crazy amount of water on this thing, and it's bone dry. Like, I don't see anything coming out of these guys. So definitely worth checking these rear ones as well, because these are, you know, basically the same thing as the front. They're just 3/8 tubes going to drain ports in the rear. Little different design than the ones in the front, but obviously they work because these aren't leaking. Okay, so like I said, just a bunch of push clips. These hanger style ones, you just got a little cutout right here, put a pick in it, pop it out. I mean, it's all very simple and self-explanatory, but definitely worth checking those out as well, because there are rear moonroof drains in these as well. There they are, and they don't look like they're leaking to me. I see no evidence of leaking. All good. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're going to leave these alone, but definitely something you want to check out, as this is another potential leak point depending on the condition of these rear drains. All right, so something to note, guys. Just wanted to touch base on them because they do exist and they're worth looking at, as they're not nearly as hard as the front to get to. All right, so there we go, guys. All right, so we just reviewed the moonroof, sunroof, drain ports, both front and rear, as potential leak points. Now I want to get to the final leak point that I'm aware of in these cars, and that is seam sealer. Okay, now seam sealer is almost just like, you know, a putty, silicone, RTV, you know, something of that nature that is beaded around metal connection points when the car is put together. So, you know, basically there's seams where the car's metal paneling comes together, and there's seam sealer put there to prevent leaks, rusting, and, you know, really make a good bond between the panels, and etc., etc. Okay, now, from doing some research on leaks in these cars, I found on a couple forums and a couple different pictures on like car gurus and stuff like that of these cars leaking at different seams. So a few of these pictures here are actually not of this car. They're from ones that I found that people have posted that have been leaking. So as you can see in some of these, they have holes, and that's where the leak point was. So these things definitely have seam sealer leaks as well. Now, trying to resolve one of these is probably going to be a little harder, because you might potentially have to take the entire interior out to source it. I mean, it could really, there's seam sealer all throughout the interior of these cars. It could really be in the front, rear, it could be anywhere. So you might have to pull the seats out, pull the carpet in its entirety out to really source it. Hopefully that's not the case. It seems like a few of them were at the front driver kick panel, essentially kind of doing what we did for the front driver sunroof drain. Would be similar disassembly as far as the carpet and the paneling goes, to try to source that. But yes, you might really have to dig deep if you have a seam sealer leak. I would check all of these first and ensure that all of these aren't leaking if you do have a water leak. But if you go through all of these steps, all these other potential points are good, you fix them, repaired, whatever the case is, then you might just have a seam sealer leak. Okay, so definitely something to keep in mind. Anywhere in the interior where there's a seam sealer could be a potential point. Just got to get in there and find it, and really just, you know, be patient with it and take everything apart, and that would be the approach to try to find that. But, you know, just wanted to note that as well. That is a potential leak point in these cars, so definitely something to keep in mind if you've gone over all the other potential leaks and you still have water getting in the cabin. Okay, so I hope this helped with resolving the leaks in your Altima or similar Nissan. Make sure you stay tuned, because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.